AFME is the trade body which represents Europe's capital markets industry. We have nearly 200 members across all parts of the capital markets industry. We have some of the biggest investment banks and banks in the world involved in AFME. We have specialist banks, we have brokers, we have other players in the financial markets. But what brings them together is a focus on being part of Europe's capital markets. And our work is directed at ensuring that we deliver sustainable, competitive and safe markets in Europe. The way we do it is through committees, through policy work, through dialogue and in constructive engagement with officials and policymakers. In 2009, there wasn't a single pan-European body representing Europe's capital markets players. So very sensibly, a group of trade groups got together and said, why don't we create a single voice for the industry? And at a time when, frankly, we were in the teeth of a storm around the financial crisis, so it was a confluence of making sense strategically, but also responding to what was required after the crisis of 2008-2009. The AFME proposition is quite simple. Do you want to be part of an organisation that is a single voice for the European capital markets industry, that is able to get in front of the most important policymakers, whether they be in Brussels or the member states, and put forward the case for stable, competitive, sustainable capital markets? And if you do, then AFME is a single, strong, pan-European voice. Secondly, it's a tremendous network. The people who are part of AFME are engaged, they're involved, they network, they meet together, they examine issues that are of common interest. And thirdly, there's an important role to play for any member of AFME, which is being part of the mission to better explain what the role of capital markets is in Europe. We have a board of 21 member firms, and their engagement is to be part of the governance of AFME, so they help to set the direction of AFME, chaired by Michael Colfontaine of BNY Mellon. They look at the big issues that matter to AFME, they ensure that we are in good shape in terms of the way the organisation is run, and then it flows from that through a committee structure. So the board oversees the progress of AFME, but the individual committees, all specialists in their own right, then work on the dossiers, whether it be compliance or whether it be corporate finance or equities or fixed income. So the whole organism effectively is a combination of good, strong governance through a board of very senior market practitioners and then specialists who operate through the committees, all serviced by and supported by AFME's 80-strong staff based in London and in Brussels. AFME's board meets 4 times a year, twice in London and twice in other European cities. The meetings are focused on essentially the big 3 or 4 policy issues that are in front of us, giving the board the opportunity to engage in both understanding the approach that AFME is planning to take and to review and challenge, because these are often pretty difficult and challenging issues, and having such a senior board means that the input we get can directly influence and shape what we do and how we actually deliver the advocacy and the work we do on the individual dossiers. I think one of the interesting things about our industry is there's a tremendous opportunity to help the real economy. If you think of the number of small and medium-sized businesses there are in Europe, you think of the jobs that are created by those businesses, even connecting the service of our members with that section of the business community in itself makes a huge contribution to sustainable economic growth in Europe. Capital Markets Union is essentially quite a simple concept. In Europe, there are pools of savings, people's savings for pensions, people's savings over a lifetime, and they are together in one place. And the key is to take those savings and turn them into investments in the real economy. So Capital Markets Union starts with the idea that there are an awful lot of these pools of savings, capital, and they need to be turned into sensible investments. The challenge we have in Europe is that we have 28 member states and we have borders for capital across Europe. And so the key that's going to unlock capital markets union is to find ways of easing the flow of those savings into investments across those borders. And they're not physical borders, they're borders created by different barriers to capital flowing across Europe. So think of it in terms of moving towards a situation where there is one market for capital in Europe. There will always be different languages, there will always be differences in terms of the way economies are run, but essentially there's no reason why 500 million people in Europe can't all be part of enabling those pools of savings to be converted into investments, whether it's in small companies, medium companies, infrastructure projects. So it really is a very powerful idea whose time has come, but it's going to need an awful lot of work, not just at the Commission level, but through our industry as well to help make it a reality. One or two examples of how to make it a reality would be securitization, which would enable banks' balance sheets to be freed up across Europe to lend more money to SMEs, and that's always been the purpose of securitization. It had a challenging time during the crisis, but at its heart, that's what securitization delivers. The prospectus directives in Europe at the moment are quite complicated and make it quite difficult for individuals to invest in public companies in the way that companies can. That can be sorted out. And then you've got a really big problem, insolvency laws. There are different insolvency laws. So if you're looking to invest in a company that's being developed in Europe, you need to know with more certainty what would happen in the eventuality of that company failing. And we need to find a way of ensuring that there is a greater set of minimum standards around things like that. So there's no single silver bullet, but there are a series of quite sensible measures that could be put in place that would ultimately lead to investment, flows of investment taking place across Europe with greater ease. Capital Markets Union, we are told, is a long-term project. I think it's right that the Commission says that, because this is not going to happen in 12, 18 months. I think this European Commission will be the Capital Markets Union Commission, and that runs to 2019. I hope by then there'll have been progress in some of the areas that we've already discussed. But it could be a 10-year project. But in 10 years, the prize is really great, and the prize is to have these flows of capital in Europe more seamlessly working their way around this huge, exciting market. AFME's approach to advocacy is quite clear, but it's very effective. It's about constructive engagement. So when we're in front of policymakers or officials, we want to have a fact-based set of arguments, and we want to leave the policymaker or the official with a clear sense of the case, whatever it is that we are asking for. Because one of the learnings pre-crisis was there's no point in simply saying this won't work, end of story. You've got to constructively engage. And I think if we've done one thing as a trade body since 2009, we have developed a sense of trust that when we do go in and have a discussion about a particular issue, it's based on facts and we are engaging on a constructive basis, and that's the only way really to make progress. AFME focuses on, I'd say, three big buckets. There's outreach, getting out there, talking to politicians and regulators and others about important issues, about policy matters and areas of concern to our members. Second bucket is thought leadership. What are the ideas that are defining the future of our industry, and how can we help people to understand that? What's the future of our industry and areas of interest like that? And the third bucket is events and conferences. We put on about 30 events and conferences a year. They're always focused on members' interests and concerns. 3,000 people come to Barcelona to hear about securitization. Hundreds of people come to listen to areas of interest in high yield, for just two examples. So events and conferences kind of underpin, in many ways, what we do at the policy level, because we're helping to widen the message. Public trust took a great hammering at the time of the crisis, and it's going to be a long journey back. And I think we have to be realistic that there's an awful lot still to do. But actually, it's about reminding people everything that's changed since then. Banks are better managed, there's better risk management, governance is better, capital is bigger. I mean, there are lots of really significant changes. We've just got to make sure that the conduct agenda, how people behave inside banks, what they do and how they do it, that there have been genuine changes in that area. Then I think people will look at the industry and say, yes, this is a change, these organisations are run differently, they're managed differently, they're safer, they're stronger, they're better, they're making a real contribution. Since 2009, there's been an awful lot of water under the regulatory bridge. If you think of CRD4 and MiFID in particular, two blockbuster pieces of legislation, I like to think that we've played an important role in getting those over the line and helping to achieve some successes in terms of the outcome of those dossiers. I think secondly, our approach has been, as I said, of constructive engagement and a different mood, which I think really matters a lot. I think thirdly, a distinctive identity. I'm always very impressed as I go around Europe talking to people that AFME is understood, it's recognised, and people know what we're for. And frankly, that was from a standing start. And in a relatively short period of time, which is a credit to everyone involved in AFME, not just AFME people, but AFME members, we stand for something. We stand for something truly pan-European. Looking forward, it would be great to be able to look back and say Capital Markets Union is a reality, because genuinely this is a big idea, and if together with other industry bodies and members we can really make a difference to cracking this problem of sustainable economic growth in Europe through opening up Europe's capital markets, that would be a really significant achievement.